I'm here, you're there, and so let's get started. The head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr, came out of hibernation just long enough to announce that he does not want the identity of the so-called whistleblower made public. Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, many others have said the same thing. Roy Blunt. Now, when you're in the Senate, you're a lawmaker. You have a staff. You have a variety of lawyers on your staff. You have legislative counsel, legislative directors. You have general counsel or just counsel generally. And before you make statements like this, don't you think you actually should know what's in the law? This is not only embarrassing to these senators, it is a grave disservice to the American people. It's left to other people to do the legal analysis. It's left to other people to find out who the whistleblower is. It's left to other people to dig into the backgrounds of their lawyers. Because the Republicans in the Senate could care less. The Republicans in the House are doing the very best they can. They're in the minority. And, of course, the vast Democrat Party press is doing everything they can to cover up for the so-called whistleblower, the Democrats, and Adam Schiff, given their hate lust for the President of the United States. So let's take a little time and go over this statute. Andy McCarthy, a dear friend of mine, has a great piece in National Review today. And as I read it, I'm reminded, Mr. Producer, we talked about this a couple of months ago, or 6 weeks ago, whenever this whistleblower came out, but it's an important refresher. And I want you to listen very carefully, because when I go through this with you, you're going to know more than every reporter and every Republican in the Senate. Or maybe they know it, but they pretend they don't, which is even worse. The whistleblower statute does not, as we said weeks ago, I want to underscore, does not apply to the President of the United States. As Andy said, it does not apply to the conduct of foreign policy. It does not apply to the President's conversations with foreign leaders. Period. Period. The whistleblower statute, as applies to the President, let alone impeachment, is utterly and completely irrelevant. Irrelevant. How then can the chairman, the Republican chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, say that we want to keep the so-called whistleblower's name secret? And between half a dozen and 10 Republicans in the Senate say the same thing. They are irresponsible. They are not upholding the law. They are defying the Constitution and rewriting the law. Let me continue. This so-called whistleblower does not have statutory protection. We've also talked about this, but Andy provides us with a good reminder. It doesn't meet the statutory elements. He was not an official who reports on intelligence activities within the jurisdiction of the Director of National Intelligence. He was serving as a member of the National Security Council staff, with his ultimate report being the President of the United States. So, it doesn't apply to the President and the so-called whistleblower. The statute doesn't apply to him. Number 3, we've also touched on this, but again, a good reminder. The law does not guarantee plenary or general anonymity to any whistleblower, let alone this one. Only the Inspector General of the intelligence community, is to keep it confidential. And even under certain circumstances, he doesn't have to keep it confidential. Unnecessary to go into those. So there's literally no factual or statutory basis to say that the President of the United States is bound by the whistleblower statute, or that the so-called whistleblower is incorporated in the whistleblower statute. Neither are. Neither are. There is absolutely no legal reason, none, for the so-called whistleblower's identity to be kept secret. No legal reason whatsoever. Congress has never provided overarching legal protection to any whistleblower, and certainly not in the context of launching an impeachment effort where it has never been done. And finally, as I point out over and over again, the Constitution trumps any statute. So if you're going to use a filing to trigger an impeachment inquiry, which is exactly what happened here, a phony impeachment inquiry, but an inquiry nonetheless, based on a complaint filed by this individual, well, the individual can't then surround himself or wrap himself in a statute, the whistleblower statute or any other statute, and say, well, I'm not coming forward. The Constitution trumps everything. And the public's right to know in this context, when you're talking about impeaching and potentially removing a president, not that they will, but potentially, takes precedent. Obviously. Now, you've learned more in 5 minutes than you'd learn on any news show on TV or radio or any other talk show. But I'm not done. So why hide the so-called whistleblower? Why hide the whistleblower from the public? Because it's dangerous out there? That's not a reason. Because you'll intimidate future whistleblowers? He's not a whistleblower. How can you impeach a president of the United States? A process said to be triggered by this person's complaint without the House of Representatives, the United States Senate, the President of the United States, and the American people scrutinizing his motives, credibility, and veracity. It's not that the substance of his complaint is determinative. I would tell my friend Andy and others, that's not the point. I'm not interested in him testifying about his complaint. I'm interested in him testifying about the fact of his complaint. It is wholly relevant for the American people, the committee, the full Congress, and the president to know about this individual's conduct, contacts, partisanship, etc. Absolutely relevant. And that's why the Democrats, the media, and some feckless Republicans would apparently have the nation go through an impeachment process and a trial, if they had their way, without ever knowing who started it. Now that would be unconscionable. And yet that's what they insist on. And yet, we reportedly know who the whistleblower is. But official Washington is conducting the most bizarre cover-up in American history. His name is everywhere. Don Jr. tweets out an article that's linked on the Drudge Report identifying the individual. Forget his name. What is it? Hold on, let me find my article here. Eric Chiamarella. And I've said he and his lawyers can come forward and deny it. I'm more than happy to have them on the program. I believe in that. The truth shall set you free. Yet, we know who it is, reportedly. Right, Eric? Eric Ciaramella. And we know about Eric Ciaramella. The problem is the vast majority of the people don't know any of this. They don't know any of this. Eric Ciaramella's name is all over the place, except in the vast majority of broadcast media and print media, which is really amazing given how much leaks out there. Top secret leaks. Oh, look at this. Pulitzer. So this is the most bizarre cover-up in American history. Why? Why the cover-up? Because, ladies and gentlemen, this cover-up is intended to protect the Democrat Party. He's a Democrat. The Obama administration. He worked for the Obama National Security Council, became a holdover in the Trump administration. They gave him the boot because of reported leaks. That's what the article says. Cover-up? Yes, for Adam Schiff, who knows all about the so-called whistleblower and all the shenanigans that took place in the shadows leading up to his complaint. It's a cover-up of the former National Security Council staffers who were hired by Schiff, but who had worked for Obama and, again, were holdovers in the Trump National Security Council, with whom, at least one of them, this so-called whistleblower, colluded. And he was friends with both of them. Cover-up. Cover-up of Joe Biden, with whom this so-called whistleblower was close. And it's amazing. Not a single reporter with access to Joe Biden has dared to ask Joe Biden, what do you know about Eric Ciaramella? What do you know about Eric Ciaramella? You're not allowed to whisper his name. Can't even whisper it. Not even under your breath. Cover up. He worked for John Brennan. We got to cover all these things up. Because you see, the whistleblower is noble and courageous. He's a patriot. He was so moved to act, despite all the dangers he would face, to file a complaint against the President of the United States. After consulting with Obama former staffers, now Schiff staffers. Oh, and the lawyers. We told you about the lawyers last night. I told you about the lawyers 5 weeks ago. And what a fraud PolitiFact is. It's intended to cover up or protect the so-called whistleblowers' lawyers, who've been pretending to be nonpartisan for months, including his chief lawyer, who supported a coup against the President of the United States with his phony excuse today. A coup against the President of the United States back in January 27, 10 days after Trump was sworn in. His chief lawyer, Mark Zaid. We can't expose him either, can we? Meanwhile, the House Democrats adopted rules making it impossible for the Republicans to call this supposed whistleblower, here's the trick, without Adam Schiff's approval. In fact, none of these actors can be called as witnesses without Adam Schiff's approval. So you have a grand cover-up, and the lead perpetrator, Adam Schiff, is in charge of the cover-up. Right in front of your eyes. It's not even clever, it's clumsy. But the media are complicit. They control the flow of information to the vast majority of the American people. The flow of information is controlled by the Trump haters. The cover-up is controlled by the perpetrators. Secret testimony without cross-examination by the President's counsel. Of course the media didn't complain about that. Witnesses are carefully controlled. Their questions are carefully controlled. And then they release transcripts. Hundreds and hundreds of pages of transcripts from 9, 10, 11-hour depositions in secret in the SCIF in the bottom of the Capitol building. And you know what else they've been releasing with these long, heavy-duty transcripts, which are very, very difficult to download on the House Intelligence Committee's website? A summary by the House Intelligence Committee. That's what they call it, but it's really a summary by Adam Schiff and the boys, his mobster buddies. Very easy to read. It's 7, 8 pages long, not hundreds and hundreds of pages. And you know what's fascinating? The media have used the summary that the Democrats have put out, not the transcript. Did you ever wonder why the New York Times, CNN, the Washington Post could get those headlines out so fast? They're taking the talking points summary produced by Adam Schiff and the Democrats under the authority of the committee and going with these headlines. Blockbuster testimony! Oh my God! By bureaucrats who are giving their opinions. And so when Lee Zeldin, great patriot, Republican, Long Island, cross-examines a witness like William Taylor, and you find out from that the cross-examination that he didn't know anything about anything firsthand. He was just popping off and giving his opinion. That wasn't in the summary. I've got more. I'll be right back.